Hello, everybody. Welcome to Right to Independence. I'm here with Tracy Sutton. Hello,
Hi,
Tracy.
Trish.
Welcome. So, Tracy, tell me first, what do you do and where are you from?
Sure. I'm an intuitive wellness coach. I'm based in the DC area. Essentially, what I do is I help people live from their true selves versus a kind of strategic performance based self.
Wow, that just like went right over my head, Tracy.
Well,
Like,
I,
whoop.
I think you got some good questions for me, so we're gonna dig a little deeper into what that means.
Yes, yes. So, Tracy, I know you from the fitness world. You've been in fitness and nutrition. You were in fitness and nutrition for what, over 10 years, and that's how I know you. To me, you're one of the smartest and the most educational fitness people that I know. So I'm sure you're one of the best coaches there is around for people who need your type of service. My question is, how did you end up transitioning from fitness and nutrition to wellness, a wellness
Yeah,
coach?
it's actually a cool story, I think, for me personally anyways. Like you said, I got into the fitness and nutrition industry 15 years ago. And I just kept seeing people struggle. They'd have these goals, whether it was to lose weight or gain muscle or whatever it was. And there was kind of always this struggle of missing the goal. I would say 10% of my clients hit the goal, right? The other 90% just struggled. And what I've started to notice is that there was something underneath all that. Like there was a root issue, right? That typically had to do with self worth and self esteem that was actually preventing them from hitting that goal. So as I started to notice this more and more, I'm like, I'm doing surface level work here. What I really want and
Yeah.
need to be doing is root level work. So that's kind of how I came into the intuitive wellness coaching space about 5 years ago.
Oh my goodness. Okay. And where are you based out of?
DC, the DC metro area.
Oh, okay. I love DC. I can't wait to go back to DC. Tracy, one of your core beliefs, I believe, is you don't need another plan. You just need a new relationship with
Yeah,
yourself.
yes. I mean, think about
Talk about
Yeah,
that.
like, if you look at the entire pharmaceutical, supplementation, weight loss industry, I mean, there's always a new plan, right? There's a new plan, there's a new supplement, there's a new thing, and so really, all that is masking the root issue, which is how we relate to ourselves, and how I said before, which was, helping people live from a place of their true self versus this space of strategy and performance. And what I mean by that is, as children, we have to step into this role to basically survive, right? If our parents leave us, there's no way we're surviving. As adults, we've got it. But as children, there's no way. So we're going to step into this space of strategy and performance in order to get and maintain someone's love, connection, approval, acceptance. The issue with that is we kind of stay with that through our adolescence and adult selves. And then, we become people pleasers, over functioners, hyperachievers, all, kind of in an effort to build our self worth, which was kind of stripped away because we left our true essence as a child to get that love and acceptance that we wanted from our parents or caregivers.
That is true, but women are taking that anymore. More women, I mean, if you look at statistics, at least 30% of women have decided not to
Yeah.
marry, right? They're deciding not to marry because they decided that they want to develop themselves, have a career, travel, find themselves, and they're becoming more career oriented and their higher education, financially independent. So they don't need to have that extra partner. So you still feel that they need to work on themselves even though they're discovering themselves maybe later in life?
Yeah, I mean, what I noticed, and this was kind of going to go back to your transition question. My own personal story is that I've been in recovery for 16 years from an eating disorder, and I often attract people who use food as a coping mechanism. And so, yes, you could still do the things you want to do, but if there's that root struggle underneath all of that with the self worth and the self esteem and having a hard time feeling your feelings and being in touch with that, you're going to go out into the world and you're going to use something as a coping mechanism. It could be food, it could be over exercising, it could be sex, it could be gambling, it could be shopping, it could be scrolling on Instagram for 2 hours, right? It could be anything.
Yeah, that is true. I still can't imagine that parents with all the education out there are still using food, believe it or
They
not,
are.
as a way of disciplining their child. I can't imagine that with all the education out
It's
there.
so true. I heard it just recently. It's like that whole thing, you're not gonna get dessert if. It's so dependent on a behavior. I know. It's hard to believe, but it is still in existence.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, many of the older adults right now, Tracy, are, let's just say, were raised in a time when their emotions were private,
Yeah,
right? We couldn't show our emotions. It was even considered taboo.
100%.
Uh, so right? So what is the first step in helping you think to build a better relationship with their own selves, with their
I would
emotions?
say, that is such a good question because when I think of my clients in their mid-60s who come to me to start this work, the first thing that I have to kind of get them on board with is it's gonna be very uncomfortable to start to attune to their
Wow.
needs, attune to their emotions, their wants, their desires, because most people who grew up in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s come from a background where it's like, put your feelings in your back pocket. You hear the whole expression, "You want me to give you something to cry about?" No
Yeah.
parent from typically no parent, it's very rare that I meet someone with a parent who was very compassionate and curious and understanding about a child's emotions. It's usually not that way. So that's kind of the first thing I have to
Right.
explain is, it's gonna be really uncomfortable for you to start to attune to your emotions when you were taught as a child to not attune, to disregard, disown, deny, reject your own emotions. So
Right.
that's kinda like the first step is they kinda have to be on board with the fact that this is gonna be a little uncomfortable to go from that space to this space.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, that's I don't know what to say about that. I mean, I just think that's just so dramatic that people still in their 50s, 60s, and 70s still haven't found themselves. But they have. I'm glad that there's people like you that can allow these people to connect with themselves because what I'm noticing in my business, because I am in the senior concierge business, there are some people out there, seniors out there that are still angry. They can't get rid of that anger, and they've had that anger their whole life, and I think that stems from what you were saying from when they were being raised, and then it surfaces.
Yeah.
They can't deal with it, so then that's where you come in,
Yeah,
and you help them with
you're
that.
right, because think about it, if we're children and we're told not to feel something, we have to suppress our emotions, and there's only so much suppression that any human can withstand before it turns to anger, right? I mean, just think about stuffing your feelings all the time or, whatever need or want you have just being dismissed. So it's like any person's going to be angry. They're going to start to feel powerless. They're going to start to feel like their self worth is dependent on a certain action or behavior they take. All of that's going to lead to feeling angry for any person, I think, for most people.
Right. Well, what do you think about what's happening right now with the with men right now feeling so much anger and being lost, like all of a sudden they didn't have fathers? I mean, what the hell's going on with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? They're all coming out and they're being rebellious and they're like, I don't know, what's going on with the men right
Yeah.
now? Do you understand what I'm talking? I'm sure you've heard about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, when I think of the male coaching clients that I have, there's not one client I have whose father has not completely emotionally suppressed. So and we kind of go into our life taking what we learn. It's called transmission. If I saw my mom or dad do something or they did something in the way they interacted or behaved with me, I just take that and then I go out and I be that, right? That's what I learned until I unlearn it, which is the whole reason I have a job, right? I'm helping people unlearn.
Right, right, right.
But yeah, I mean, you're spot on. Like we just said, there's so many people who grow up with this, especially, men culturally are taught to be so alpha, right? There's really no room
Yes,
for
right,
emotions. Emotions have been associated
right,
with femininity, which is not true. Emotions are actually human, right? No matter what you identify as or what you're born as, like you're gonna have emotions if you came into this world as a human being, 100%.
right, right. Do you feel that your clients are more women or men
I
at
would
this
say
time?
right now they're predominantly women. I attract a lot of women. I also think though that like we just said, culturally, fewer men we're still in a space where fewer men more are stepping up, but in general,
Okay,
they're not coming forward and they don't have the willingness to be vulnerable just yet like women do because of
right,
the cultural norms that we have created over the many, many decades that we've been here, hundreds, thousands of
right,
years, obviously. The
right.
decades that you and I have on this earth.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I did notice that, and I did wanna bring that up to you because I'm like, "What is happening with these men out there?" I mean, they're just so
Mm,
angry, and why they taking it out on us women? I mean, we're not the one we're not the ones that, put the hurt on them or emotionally deprive them of anything, but, you know,
yeah,
um, and I'm glad
I can't even imagine being associated with weak, right? Because that's what you hear, right? As little boys, like, "Don't cry," that's you're
Yes.
"Don't
Yeah,
be weak." I just can't even imagine what it must be like to be a human,
yeah.
have your feelings, and then be told because you have your feelings, you're weak. Like, that's so diminishing to your self-worth and self-esteem. Of course, that's gonna make someone angry to
Right.
suppress all that.
Right, and I can't imagine, anybody raising their child that way. And then another thing that's happening also with not I'm gonna change back to women is obviously body image. That's always been a thing with women. The struggles that women had because in their youth, they were, not forced, but, they were talked down on. Um, but many of the women and men over 60 are still battling with that. Because it surfaced, but it was never, taken care of.
Yeah.
So body image is very big. So do you work with people who have body image
Oh, yeah.
issues?
That's a huge, huge part of the population that I
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
I actually did a master's program in my early 20s, and the work that I did in my master's was on body image. And there was a big, just a ton of research that supported how body image is associated to especially, right, like in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, before we got to the digital age, you'd go to the grocery store and all the magazines that would line the cashier are like, women in bathing suits who just are 10s out of 10s with the best body you've ever seen. And you just start to
Right.
associate, I need to look like this. Right? Like, so there's
Right.
part what
Right.
you see around you through media, now it's on social media, whether it's print media, whatever it is, and then there's the other piece, which is we're culturally taught that if we are looking better, thinner, fitter, prettier, whatever, we're worth more, right? That's like the unspoken truth that we're worth
Right.
more,
Right.
which obviously is not true, but that takes a really long time to unlearn when it's been ingrained in you for 20, 30, 40, 50 years or more.
Oh, definitely. Well, I'm gonna tell you a little story now about my thighs because 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 I did have body issues, believe it or not, because my mother was
Mm,
obese. But back then, obesity wasn't obese. They were just having a lot of kids. So they kept the weight. I mean, I came from a family of 7. They were just having kids back then. It wasn't a thing about being fat. It was just women were just bigger from having so many children. And I was a middle child. And, I remember I got my first apartment with my girlfriend, and I think I must have been 8 I was 19, yeah, 19, 18, 19, something like that, and I decided I was gonna take a walk because I just felt like taking a walk, and I still remember, Tracy, walking and a group of guys, young men, were driving by and they looked at me and they said, "Oh, she's cute, but she's got big
Mm.
thighs." I heard it. You know what my goal was for the rest of my life? Keeping my thighs nice and
Yep, I
thin.
believe it.
That's
Yep.
right. That's right. So that's why I have nice and thin thighs
Well,
right now.
that's you just proved that point, right? Like, if in their mind, if you had the thighs they wanted you to have, whatever circumference or shape that is, then they would have wanted you, right? So that's that immediate
Right.
assumption of, "Oh, if I look better, thinner, fitter, have a better butt, larger breasts, whatever it is, then I'm going to be wanted," right?
Right, right. I mean, I guess I have bigger thighs. It made me look at my thighs. I had no idea. But that definitely motivated to get in the fitness world, believe it or not. And I ended up being a fitness instructor at Figure World. It was a woman's gym. And I learned how to be a trainer. And I was doing aerobics. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. You know, back then we didn't need certifications. There was no
Yeah.
certifications. You just went to a gym, you asked for a job, and, you know, you learned as you went as you did the program or the machines or whatever. But that started me on the road to fitness, and, maybe it's a good thing, I don't know. I don't have an issue with my body. It never affected me like a lot of people does affect. Motivation is big with me, looking great is big with me, feeling great is big with me. Obviously, I just feel, being a fitness trainer, of course, it's just part of my life, and, to me, being fit is feeling sexy.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you're kind of making a really important point, which is, do you do something for yourself or do you do something so that you feel worthy by someone else?
Right, right, and I do it for
Yeah.
myself. I do it for myself. I like looking sexy, I feel sexy. When I feel sexy, I know I look sexy, and that's just me. But I don't do it, I don't do it for anyone but for
Mhm.
myself, and of course, my husband appreciates it tremendously. But what advice would you give older adults who feel that they missed, a chance to find
Mm.
healing?
Yeah, I mean, that's what
I mean, because they think they're too old.
yeah. I've actually met a handful of people over the years who've said, quote, "It's too late for me." And it breaks my heart,
Right.
honestly, because it's
Yeah,
never too
yeah,
late to honor yourself and your feelings and live in your truth. I mean, it's never too late. I don't care if you have 3 days left on this planet. Like, those are gonna be
right.
the most rewarding, fulfilling 3 days when you honor your needs, right? You respect your truth, you tune in to that little girl, that little boy inside of you. I mean, there's no, like, "It's too late." That doesn't exist. I get that it's a limiting belief.
Right.
I get that that exists in a lot of people's minds, and it's not true. It's not true.
Yeah. Yeah. Not only that, people in their 60s and 70s, they're getting into their second and their third act of life. I mean, people are living to 9,500 years old. I don't know if you noticed, and people might remember, but I had a episode with an 86-year-old trainer who's still teaching spinning. His name is Roger Anthony. Guys, if you haven't seen my episode with Roger Anthony, please take a look at it. He's 86 years old and he's doing spinning classes. And he's an amazing man. Him and his wife still travel the world, and he loves fitness. And he works locally at one of the spas. But I like to use him as an example that I don't wanna hear from you telling me that it's too late. I don't wanna hear, "Oh, Trish, I'm too old. I'm too old to do that," when I ask him to do something. "Oh, I'm too old," or "I'm too this or that." No, absolutely not, and then I always bring up Roger Anthony. Here's 86-year-old man still teaching spinning classes. So I can't hear your excuse because there's people doing it out there, right? There's people doing it out there. So, I like to bring them up. Another question I have about seniors and maybe older people is how can seniors create a deeper trust? and emotional freedom when it comes to, you know, holding themselves together.
Yeah.
It's not easy when they don't have a partner. It's not easy when they're widowed.
It is harder when you're by yourself, especially if you did have a partner who was supportive of the process for sure, right? But I would say, yeah, to build a deeper sense of self-trust, I'm gonna say what I say no matter who you are, no matter what your age is, and that is to start very small. Because if you're coming from the background of the childhood where it just wasn't acceptable for you to have your feelings, right? Or for you to say no to an invitation, right? So many of us grew up like, you gotta say yes. They've invited you to this party. It's really nice of them. You gotta say yes, right? Even though you don't wanna go. So we learn from an early age, oh, we just suppress how we feel. We do what others want from us so that we can make sure, they still love and accept us. So starting small is the key. Like building deeper self-trust because we so many of us have moved away from whatever our true self is, whatever our needs are that we've kind of suppressed. The first step is actually acknowledging what that is, right? So many of us are like in autopilot.
Right.
We just go, we just do. We don't even think, we don't even check in, we don't even see how we feel. We're not even attuned to what's happening with our nervous system. So just the small, small task of taking your focus outward, like what will this person think if I say no? What will this person still want to
Right.
be my friend if I turn them down for such and such? Taking the focus from outward and then turning it inward, which is let me just spend a minute or two and get clear, even if I'm not able to take action today on what my truth is. Let me at least spend a minute or two, which is a lot more than people got when they were a kid. Let me spend a minute or 2 and just attune to what I'm feeling. So it's like, okay, yeah, you know what? I actually don't wanna go to this party with this person. It doesn't feel good to me, it doesn't light me up. I just genuinely don't wanna go. I'm just not interested. So at least that kind of check-in and acknowledgement is just like that little first step, and then you can actually start to progress from there. But that which you don't acknowledge, it stays, kinda stuck.
Well, people don't know how to acknowledge it because they're not gonna because first of all, they don't know how. They're not gonna know because they're not being told. People are, learn by
Yeah.
rote. People learn, what they're taught. And if they're taught not to have their own decision if they wanna go or not, then, they're not gonna learn that. They're not gonna know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not gonna know that. How about parents? Do you see parents also
Yeah,
to children? I mean, do
yeah.
you coach
I don't see
parents?
their children, but I coach them. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, you do coach parents, they'll come to you
Absolutely.
when they have difficult children or they feel that they just don't know how to deal with an emotional person because they're bipolar or they have some type of, other
Yeah, I
illness.
mean, they're basically looking through the lens that they're familiar with, the one that they most likely grew up with, that the one they've continued to cultivate, which is kind of like the strategic performance lens, meaning they may not even be in touch with their own true needs and their true essence and what regulates their nervous system, for example. So you can imagine if they're feeling that way or they're going through life that way, then it's going to be really hard to be an example or transmit anything else to their children.
True,
Yes.
true. And how about do you also work with, so you don't work with children at all, you just work with
I have
adults?
worked with teenagers, like 16, 17, but
Teen
no one under 16.
Okay. Have you worked with teenagers or children who are trying to discover who they are? What their sexual preference are?
I've worked with a couple over the years, yes, and honestly, it's in the same line of what's true for me. Can I honor what's true for me? Am I ready to be uncomfortable with the fact that whatever I end up honoring that's true for me is going to be uncomfortable? Can I get comfortable with
Right.
being uncomfortable? That's honestly the true nature of all of this work because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, being true to yourself when they're trying to discover who they
Yes.
are. Because as teenagers, their brain is still developing till they're at least 21. So they're trying to figure out who they
Yeah.
are. They don't know if they're gay or not. Maybe they do know. Some children discover their identity and their sexuality
Yeah.
early. Some others take them a very long time. I mean, I have a little cousin who didn't discover he was gay till he was 24. He was still trying to find out because he didn't know. He wasn't exposed, let's just put it that way. He didn't come from the urban cities where it's all around, and he wasn't educated in a area where it was around him, so it wasn't familiar. A lot of these children who come from these rural areas, it's even harder for them because they're not surrounded by like-minded people, right?
Right.
They're not surrounded by like-minded people. They're not surrounded by other people who are like them. So when they grow up and they find these people, they're like, "Oh, wow, I am not the only person like this." There are other people
Yeah.
like this. But so you say to people often they trade their love to find love because they think it's impossible to be themselves.
Well, yeah, so they trade their truth for love, right?
Your
So let's
truthful love.
say
Yeah,
let's say you invite me to go out to the movies tonight, and I'm too
right.
afraid to say no to you because I don't wanna lose you as a friend, and I'm worried that if I say no, maybe you're not gonna ask me out again. So my truth is, no, I actually don't wanna go. I'm pretty tired. I wanna stay home tonight. But I'm trade my
Right.
truth for love from you, right? Because I think that if I say yes to you and I go out with you and do this thing with you, then you're gonna be happy with me. And I'm gonna get your love and your approval and your acceptance, right? Yeah. That's
Yeah,
kind of
but I don't think anybody can be that so secure that they would think that I wouldn't want them as a friend just because they say no every once in a while.
yeah, you'd be surprised because I take it I don't experience or perceive you as someone who really struggles with people pleasing. I've known you for at least a decade. I've never been a witness to you being challenged by that, but those people who struggle with people pleasing, over functioning, hyperachieving, always kind of taking the path to do whatever they can to increase their self-worth or self-esteem, they actually do really, really struggle with a dynamic like that.
Wow. Okay. Well, I people need to find their truth, and I'm glad that you're around to help them find their truth. I just can't imagine that. Again, this is going over my head, Tracy, because this is a lot of stuff about finding your truth. Because I think it's important, obviously, to people be, self confident and love themselves and support themselves. But there's a lot of people out there who are not raised with the love and attention and validation
Yeah.
to create a whole
Right.
human being,
And then take it one step
right?
further, let's say you were raised by a caregiver or a parent who was maybe emotionally absent or was into drugs or alcohol or whatever it is. And then you go, of course,
Right.
you're going to attract that person, right? Because if you know anything about psychology, we go and attract that person back into our lives as
Yes.
adults. And then it's like it becomes even harder to be our true self because we're just kind of in
Right.
childhood version as an adult. So we're kind of playing out that same exact loop again.
Right. Right. And a lot of these people that I see that's what's going on here in America and globally, and their followers. Where does that come in? Where they feel that they need to follow someone, they feel that they have to believe that same rhetoric that's being told to them, even though it's not and it's not honest at all. I mean, it's just a lot of bullshit. Um, what do you think about those people that are like that?
I believe there's safety for them, right? So that's
Safety.
our
Okay.
goal. Our nervous system is always looking for homeostasis. It's always looking for us to feel safe in a balanced way. And so people who follow other people, like to your point, what you're talking about, usually it's because there's either a sense of belonging, there's this sense of safety,
Yeah.
there's a sense of cohesiveness, even community acceptance. And those people who struggle with kind of just standing in their own truth, regardless of how people might respond to them, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for safety.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a shame that they're looking for safety when they should be looking, for safety with their family, with their loved one, with their husband, with their children, instead of trying to find safety in the outward
Yeah,
world.
mostly with themselves. I mean, the safety with themselves is where real safety begins. That's why I do so much inner child work because until we can get that little girl, little boy within us to feel safe, it's really hard to live a life of truth. It really is.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on and telling me, what you do. But tell me about what do you have going on right now with your coaching? I believe you have a few sessions. Let's talk
Sure.
about those. What do you have going on right now?
So at the end of August, I'm kicking off an inner child masterclass series. It'll be 4 90-minute classes. We're going to go through how to be with your feelings, how to tend to your inner child, how to identify your core vulnerabilities, how to create an internal dialogue so that you can actually take action versus kind of staying and living from a place of fear. So that's gonna kick off at the end of August. You can find more, info about that on my website. And then the coaching experience is something I created recently this year. That's gonna kick off in September. So essentially, 8 coaches are gonna come together with varying degrees of experience. Could be 5 years, 1 year, 20 years. And a client will come into the coaching experience and they'll receive coaching for a total of 30 minutes, but 10 minutes from each coach out of 3 people. So the client gets to experience 3 different types of coaches, which is really cool because if anybody's new to coaching,
That's
they
cool.
have no
Yeah.
idea kind of what's right, what's kosher, what's ethically aligned. They just have no idea, right? So really cool
Right, right.
experience for a coach to try it out because they are also getting to learn from other coaches, right? In any profession, the best way to grow is to learn from your peers. So I
Right.
bring
Right.
the
Exactly.
coaches and the client together for just basically a mutually beneficial experience.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I like that coaching. Not only that, I mean, it's called a coaching
Mhm. Yes.
experience. So you're teaching coaches how to be better
Mhm.
coaches. You're also teaching people who want to go into your field, become a coach.
Well, this would have to be more
No.
qualified, certified coach. So anyone
Oh,
who was
okay.
interested in coaching would not be, qualified to come into the coaching experience. Yeah,
Okay, so they already have to be a
exactly.
coach. Okay, okay. Well, I will link everything, on my notes, so if anyone wants to get in touch with you, if anyone wants to be part of your inner child masterclass, which I think is gonna be fantastic, 4 sessions, I mean, my goodness, I'm sure they'll be able to get everything they need to straighten themselves out, and you're gonna help them be the best that they can be as their own person. The coaching experience, I love that. I mean, I love that, you're helping coaches be better
Yep.
coaches. So that's really cool. So we'll link everything up but Tracy, thank you so much for coming on Ride to Independence and gracing us with your knowledge and your truth and your love and energy, and, we really appreciate what you
Thanks,
do.
Trish.
Everybody, find Tracy if you need the help. Everything will be linked. Tracy, thank you so much for
Thanks, Trish. I
coming.
appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.